So everyone has heard of the fight or flight response, and most people probably have heard of freeze and fawn as well. There's also a fifth response called flop. But before I get into all of those, I just wanted to take a second to explain to you that these responses don't just come up when we're feeling particularly threatened or we're in big time danger or something really bad is going on. They actually come up more often than we realize. Conventional wisdom teaches us that the five F's are defense responses. But in truth, they actually appear multiple times a day with multiple different people in multiple different situations based on the different moods we're in, the different places we're in, the different things we've heard or seen, different triggers that might have happened. They come up in all different situations, and it's important to be aware of them so that we can adjust how we might react. The term defense mechanism also applies to emotional defenses, and maybe we'll react differently to that over aggressive coworker who reminds us of our father, or that girl at the gym who's maybe being really rude to you or ignoring you like your sister might have done. What can actually happen is that we're triggered by certain body language or certain ways of speaking, certain tones of voice or certain actions that remind us of our past and remind us of a time when we felt threatened or in danger or criticized in some way, put down by the people around us when we were young. And what's happening today in our environment takes us back to that state we were in as kids. And if we're not conscious of those things that have triggered us, we will naturally default to one of the five F's that served us at the time. A behavior that served us in the moment when we were in danger or when we felt threatened. And it's a behavior that no longer serves us in today's world. And it's something that we want to change as adults. So an example of this might be tone. I think my partner and I used to be very guilty of reacting to each other when we felt threatened or put on the spot or criticized in some way. I might ask her if she's done dinner yet, and she'll say, "No, I haven't. Well, I thought you were going to do it." And really, what's happening is she felt criticized for not having done it and was worried that she was going to get shouted at. And perhaps her way of responding was to snap back at me and saying, "Well, why didn't you do it?" and pass the blame on to me. Now, that dynamic doesn't actually happen that often with us. It's just an example of something that might have happened. But it's to show you that if you're not conscious of how you react, you can default to one of the five F's. Someone might say to you, say a friend, "God, can you just wait a minute?" And you might think that actually that reminds me of my mother criticizing me or being overly aggressive to me when I was younger. And that makes me go on the defensive and makes me feel threatened, when in truth, your friend was just speaking normally in a way that he didn't think was a big deal at all. I find it very difficult when people don't necessarily text me back or don't think to invite me to something, because that reminds me of the times when I was isolated by my family and they didn't want me around. So if that happens in my day to day, I've got to be very conscious that I don't go back into my shell and start dissociating because I feel unwanted by people. If I did feel like that, then perhaps I'd go into my shell, I'd go back into watching something on YouTube, or I'd sit in the corner, I'd stay in the house. I wouldn't necessarily reach out to people because I might feel unwanted, and I've trained myself not to think like that anymore. The process I'm going to take you through in a second is a way to analyze these patterns of behavior from your childhood, understand where they've come from, and help you recognize which of the five F's you might default to. Maybe some of the behaviors you exhibit as a result, and what we can do about them to change them. Once you're finished reading this page, hit the check mark in the top right-hand corner, and we'll get to work on the next page.